Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody in here. We do have some seats up front. There's always seats up front, y'all. Good morning. So glad you guys are here today. Happy VBS kickoff day. All right, so we're going to begin here in just a moment as we get settled. So we're continuing our Practicing the Way class this morning. For those of you who are new to this class, I know we have several who are here because one of the other classes is not meeting this morning. But we're glad you guys are here with us today. So what we do in this class, it's a little different than normal classes. We do have the teaching and the discussion time, and I will teach and say stuff, and then I'll ask questions, and then you guys will talk about it amongst yourselves at your tables in just a little bit. But we also go over a spiritual practice every single week, and so that's part of the idea of this is not just knowledge, but how can we put our faith into practice? That's what we're doing. And then throughout the week, you're challenged to reflect on that experience, think about it, live it out. Whatever it was, all the things we've done, you incorporate that into your weekly life. And then we come back in here and process that together. So we talk about how did it go last week? You know, what did you learn about your experience? I will say sitting at a table with other people will enhance your discussion. So if it's just you or a couple there, you might want to hop at a table with somebody else. Though you'll be cued later when that discussion happens, but it's going to be more profitable to you if you follow it that way. We're going along loosely with this book. The title, obviously, is from the book, Practicing the Way, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, Do As He Did by John Mark Comer. You can find it on Amazon for relatively inexpensive. Now, last week, actually the last 2 weeks, we talked about Sabbath. And I'm not going to belabor this. We talked about it last week, I know, and some of you shared your experiences of practicing Sabbath. But I do want to ask the question for anybody here today who's been practicing this. What was challenging about your Sabbath practice? For anyone in here who tried this. I'm sorry, David? Oh, she's telling on you. Okay.
I just have difficulty trying to get it started.
Yeah. You mean like continually or just once?
I'd like to try it one time.
Yeah, it's hard. This is really hard. Stopping and resting is really hard. We're not programmed to do that. We're not trained. Sean?
Trying to get everything done and have it one day.
Yeah, we talked about that. That if you're going to have this one day, this 24-hour period of true Sabbath rest, you got to do the prep work beforehand. That can be hard sometimes. Hard making that adjustment. Anybody else have any challenges you want to share? This is hard. This is why we camped out on this for a couple of weeks. This is a hard one for us. Hard for us to do. All right, let's just review before we start today. The practices, the spiritual practices, spiritual disciplines are a means to an end. So we're not doing this stuff just to say we're doing this stuff, right? It's not about prayer and Bible reading and the examen or Sabbath or any of these things we started doing. It's about these things are tools to help us become like Jesus. They are practices that are strengthening us spiritually. Sabbath is a practice where we stop, rest, delight, and worship. That's what we talked about last week. Okay, stopping, resting, delighting, and worship. Matter of fact, we spent Sunday and the last 2 Wednesdays talking about it. So if you want to go, if you're curious, if you're new, like what are you talking Sabbath, you can go on YouTube. We got all those videos there for you to review that if you'd like to. So today, if you want to take a little turn today, okay, so the last several weeks, I can tell for a lot of us, this has been enlightening. This has been, wow, this is God. I'm feeling closer to God. Today is where it kind of turns a little bit Because this is where it's like, oh, this gets really uncomfortable. This is actually hard in a different kind of way. I want to share a little video to start here.
Jesus once said, "In this world you will face trouble." Suffering comes to find all of us. The loss of a loved one, a cancer diagnosis, the breakdown of a relationship. And over time, emotional pain accumulates in our soul. We carry our history in our body and live our past in our present. And all too often, our unhealed emotional pain sabotages our spiritual formation into people of love. When pain and suffering come knocking on our door, what do we do?
Okay, that was it. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that. That was a dark video, wasn't it? Man, that's. But actually, the darkness of the video, the video is, if you didn't see it, someone had died, and someone was visiting the crash site of an automobile accident. And the idea is, what do you do when suffering comes? Now, I mentioned this a moment ago. Maybe your experiences so far with the practices have been very good. Maybe you feel, I'm closer to God now than I've been in a long time. These prayer practices we're talking about, or reading scripture the ways we talked about, or Sabbath, you may feel enlivened and enlightened, and you feel close to God. Or maybe not, actually. Maybe not. Maybe as you do this, you're finding when you stop, when you slow down, and you have your quiet time, what you may be finding is that something inside you is rising up. You might find there's some emotional pain within me that I haven't really dealt with. There's some things going on about me. Maybe somebody has hurt you. And as you get quiet and you slow down, that becomes more apparent to you. Sometimes we can rush through life and we're just staying busy, so we don't have to face those things. Well, if that stuff's going on in you, and it's going on in all of us has got something. When you slow down, you get quiet, you be with God, those things are going to come to the surface, whether it's fear over the future, anxiety over the future, or if it is, some pain from the past. I want to tell you, you're not alone. Slowing down brings things to the surface. And that's one reason we don't like doing it, really. That's one reason it's hard to do this. We don't like facing those things that are hard to face. But I believe communing with God means we also have to sit with ourselves. And so this is where it gets kind of hard and tricky, y'all. This is it's not about sweet, happy sunshine on the Jesus. It's like, I'm coming to Jesus with all of me, with everything that's in me, even the bad stuff, even your pain and your griefs and your loss and your worries, all those things. There's a quote I want to share with you from Thomas Keating. He calls it when you begin to be alone with God in your quiet time. He says that's the unloading of the unconscious. Right? What's within you, what's deep within you starts coming out. Here's the larger quote. When we commit ourselves to the spiritual journey, the first thing the Spirit does is start removing all the emotional junk of a lifetime that is inside us. And that's hard. Again, this is one of those reasons why we don't go real deep with our spiritualities, because we often tend to want the quick fix, to patch it up, make you feel good. Well, you don't always feel good. Growing in Jesus doesn't mean you're always going to feel good. It's just not how it works. And so if you're doing these things, I'm saying this because if you have been praying, if you've been doing the examine, if you've had solitude or quiet, if you've been meditating, if all these things you've alluded to and talked about, Sabbath, and you feel like, I'm not feeling real good about this, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, that could mean you're doing it right, actually. It could mean you're getting down to where the good stuff is. The practices are a time to create space and time for your unprocessed emotions and pains to come into the healing light of God's love. Okay? Think about that for a second. I want to say that again. The practices are a time to create space and time for your unprocessed emotions and pains to come into the healing light of God's love. Anybody want to respond to that? What does that make you think, that statement? Agree? See, one nod. Okay, you agree with me. Very good. Now think about it this way. Pain in the body is a signal that something needs healing, isn't it? Like if you got something going on in your body that hurts, that's a sign, I got to fix something. Something's wrong. I've been doing something wrong. I got injured somehow. Or, you get over 40, you slept wrong, so you're hurting all day. Right? Some of y'all. Okay. That means something needs to be fixed. Attend to this issue within your body if you want to feel better. I would suggest, I think this is pretty clear, emotional pain is a signal from our soul. Something is wrong. If you're hurting emotionally, that means something is wrong. Something bad happened to you. Or you're doing something bad. You're not doing something right. There's something going on that say, hey, can you look at me over here, please? I need some help over here. That's what that means. The problem is the world today does not know how to deal with pain. We don't know how to deal with pain. All right. Enneagram 9s in the room? I don't like dealing with pain either. It is not fun. I have another video. This one's brighter, so this may not be an issue with the lights, but if so, I'll ask Chris to keep an eye out for that for me. But here's another video on how to deal with pain.
There are three common cultural responses to emotional pain. The first is to deny. You just deny that you have pain. This is the most popular response in a lot of Christian circles because it's so easy for us to spiritualize our denial as faith in God. The psychologist John Welwood called this spiritual bypassing, which he defined as a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. It is a futile attempt to co-opt the Christian theology of hope to skip over our pain and chase the Western life script up and to the right. The thing about denial is, it works incredibly well. It is the most effective of all coping strategies. The problem is, it's a short-term strategy, and it's incredibly dangerous. Think of physical pain. If you get hurt and it's not dangerous, your body will likely self-heal. Just give it a few days or weeks. But if you have a pain in your body that won't go away, it's highly likely that something is seriously wrong. And if you deny it or ignore it or pretend it's not real, it could grow and damage you or even kill you long term. Sigmund Freud was wrong about almost everything, but he was right that whatever we refuse to face in our inner lives has the most power over us. Denying any part of our inner life, especially those parts that are in need of a healing touch, always has destructive consequences on us and on others. The second option is you detach. You emotionally disconnect from your feelings. Certain personality types seem to have the ability to cut off their emotional pain. But if we cut off our emotional pain, we inadvertently cut ourselves off to the whole spectrum of emotion, lows and highs. We don't feel sadness, but neither do we feel joy or wonder or gratitude. Of course, the most popular way people deal with their pain is to drug it. Many people literally drug their pain with alcohol or cannabis or pain meds, but most of us drug our pain more figuratively with our cultural narcotic of choice. It could be work or our career, or sex, or romance, or social media, or entertainment, TV and film and video games. It could be anything that is used as a distraction from our pain and our God, rather than a pathway through our pain to God. When we turn to drugs, either literally or figuratively, we feel a momentary relief from our pain, but ultimately we make our anxiety or sadness worse, not better. But none of these ways of dealing with emotional pain are the Jesus way. The Jesus way is to meet God in our pain.
Okay. All right, that's heavy, isn't it? It's pretty heavy. Some heavy stuff. We're gonna work through this. But think about this that's kind of the theory and the psychology behind it. What would you say was the most painful moment in Jesus' life? I'm sorry? The cross, the crucifixion. Yeah, that was tough. Peter denying him. Okay, that was a good one. Yeah, that was hard. Somebody else said it. All right, Leola, we're on something here. I think it's Gethsemane. The cross was a moment that was very difficult for him, but yet he went through with the cross, didn't he? Right? And he's actually teaching from the cross. I would say Gethsemane was the worst moment and the hardest, most painful moment that we know of, that we're aware of in his life. That's when he seems to be emotionally the weakest. Right? He's asking for help from the disciples. Let's read it together here. Matthew 26:36. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, listen to this. He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Nevertheless, not as I will, but you will. He said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here." Did I read that incorrectly? He began to be sorrowful, nevertheless. All right, I'm going to splice the verses together there. I apologize. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." That's where it is. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Okay. Notice he began to be sorrowful. Well, what do you think that means, he began to be sorrowful? I mean, I know that's a time marker there that this started to happen. He's getting sorrowful, but it wasn't like it just hit him, right? It sounds like he just walked into this, didn't he? Like he chose, this has been weighing on me. I'm going to go into this quiet place and I'm going to feel all these things. It's like Jesus knew all this was going on. We know he said it multiple times. He's going to go to Jerusalem, suffer many things, be killed, crucified. He said all these things numerous times. But this is the moment where it's like, I'm going to get along with God. I'm going to bring this out. He willingly entered this space of being with God in the midst of his suffering. Notice Jesus did not deny it. He didn't act like everything's okay. He didn't just pretend like, okay, I'm fine. You okay? Oh, I'm fine. Totally good. He admitted he had need to his disciples. He did not detach from it, right? He didn't drug himself. He experienced and felt all those painful things. I would argue that's why he was able to go to the cross, actually. That's one thing that empowered him, is facing that with God and going to the cross with him. There's a book, a whole family of books called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzero. This guy was a preacher and a counselor and has psychology training. And all these books get this emotionally healthy church, discipleship, leaders. He's got all kinds of books because he really hit something here when he published this. Here's his thesis. It is impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. Can't happen, right? Respond to that. What do you think about that statement? Agree? Why do you think that might be true? Right? To grow, you got to grow multiple ways, not just one. What else you think?
Well, if we learn in the Bible where so we can depend on Him, God will handle that. And so we grow to it. We might be, going through something today or next month, but as long as we are constantly growing in the Word of God, and we have to read the Bible, study the Bible to know where that growth has come from. We come to church, listen to pastor, Bible study, and then we learn how to depend on God. We learn how to let it go. I mean, sometimes it's going to come up, some pain will come up every now and then, but we're not struggling with it anymore.
Yeah.
We have allowed it to just go away, and we learn how to depend on the Lord.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Leo. I appreciate all those comments. See, part of this is we tend to think like I'm a physical person, I got my emotions and my spirituality is over here. It's what I do on Sundays. That's just not true. It's all connected. Your body, your soul, and your heart, your mind, all of it's connected. So if one thing's messed up, it's going to have a trickle-down effect to everything else you got going on. And so we're not going to grow spiritually until we face those hard emotional things and grow that way too. If you got something that's blocking you emotionally, some trauma, okay, or some pain, if you're holding a grudge against somebody, right? If your mom and daddy hurt you, they're bad to you, you're holding on to that, you think you're going to grow spiritually? No, you're not. We've got to face those things, and then we can grow in more ways. Now, emotional health, think about it this way. Emotional health does not mean feeling happy. That's often what we think it is. Emotional health is, well, you just feel good. I'm in a good mood. That's not emotional health. Emotional health does mean you're aware of your feelings, and it does mean you are not run by your feelings. I heard it described this way. Maybe I've shared this with you before, but like your emotions are kind of like kids in the car crying. Right? Well, what do you do with the kids in the car when they're crying? Well, they're in the car seat in the back, ideally. You want to put them in the trunk, don't you? You want to just like lock them away, man. Be quiet. I'm trying to drive here, right? You don't put them in the trunk. That's not good. You'll get in a lot of trouble for that. That could cause a lot more problems on it. A lot more damage would come. You also don't let your kids drive the car, do you? Once. Jack.
It was a mistake.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So we are aware of our feelings, but we are not run by our feelings, okay? Psychologists call it emotional regulation. You have to regulate yourself. We'll talk. The spiritual practice we're going to do this week is that actually. The New Testament calls it self-control. All right? Left unhealed, emotional pain can sabotage our transformation. If you don't want to deal with the emotional pain, that's your choice, but you're not going to grow much deeper in Christ. However, if we open our suffering to God, I believe that could be the secret to our transformation. That weak spot, that hard spot we don't want to face. If you go there with God, that's when you're really going to make some breakthroughs. Not just retread the same ground you've always been treading, but going to some deeper places. Okay? All right, so that's it. We have some group discussion now. What we do now, once again, if you're at a table by yourself or you want to, so a few of you might want to get with somebody else because we're going to have several minutes here. I got 2 questions for you. And I'm going to read it, and then you talk about it at your table. Okay? Question 1. Can you tell one story of a painful experience you've been through that has been used for good in your transformation, your formation? Okay, y'all talk about that. Appreciate that. That's a very good discussion, y'all. Now, here's another question that this one's, if that was hard, you got to be real honest for these, okay? But this is a fun one, you might say. Which of the three responses to emotional pain are you most inclined toward? Deny, detach, drug, and what has that looked like in your life? All right, let's be honest, y'all. I'll talk. So glad for that discussion. Okay. So we're going to transition in the last few minutes to our practice time. There is a clip, by the way, there is a clipboard going around with, thank you, Dave, for small group signups. I meant to announce that at the very beginning, but clipboard's going around. If you haven't signed up for small groups, you can do that on that clipboard, or there's numerous forms out in the foyers, so you can find those. All right, so let's move on to our practice in our last few minutes here. And so the practice this week is just doing what we talked about, noticing and naming our emotions. Okay? The journey to emotional health involves learning to notice and name our emotions in the presence of God. I think that's the big part for your spiritual journey, in the presence of God doing this. And I'll admit this is hard. For some of us, this is going to be harder than others. For others, we all are very connected with your emotions, and so you're very aware of how you're feeling. But you might not bring those into the presence of God. You might be very aware of your emotions, but when you pray, you don't mention those things to God. Or if you're like me, you're not very aware of your emotions. You got to really stop and think, how do I feel? What am I feeling right now? That's a process itself. The cool thing is that emotions lose their power when you notice them. This is really cool. And there's actually science behind this. So if you are afraid and you stop and say, I'm afraid right now. I'm scared. Suddenly you stop feeling as scared. Right? And there's actually brain scans that show when they monitor people, when they name their emotions, they calm down. I don't know the lingo for it, but they calm down. So it's pretty cool that happens scientifically. There's a book I recommend called Centering Prayer and Inner Awakening by Cynthia Bourgeault. And we're not going to get into centering prayer a whole lot, but she does mention this thing called the welcome prayer. And so when you're, the idea of centering prayer is that you're kind of emptying yourself a little bit. You're grounding yourself. She uses the metaphor of, like when you get quiet with God, everything's quiet still. Imagine you're sinking to the bottom of a river. You can breathe underwater. You can breathe. You're not dying. But you sink to the bottom of the river, and you're sitting on the stones on the riverbed. And your thoughts are like, you look up, and your thoughts are like the boats that go across. Like your boat, the boat doesn't stop and get you. You just notice, there's a boat passing by. And all these things that are inside you start coming out, passing by. But in the welcome prayer, she just says, when you're quiet and you're feeling these things, hello, fear. Welcome, fear. And it disarms all the fear. I'm feeling lust. Welcome, lust. Now get out. It disarms it. So there's a saying, name it to tame it, and that's very true. When you don't name it, notice your emotions. I will say, if you don't want to get that book, it's a pretty dense read. I do highly recommend, of course, a free resource we have here, and it is Ryan Kirkendall's class on Christian mindfulness. We're kind of dovetailing with what Ryan taught a little bit this morning, and that is on Church Track if you want to find all those videos are there on YouTube still. So how should we do this then? What's the process here for this practice? Center yourself. Okay, just get in your quiet place like we've been doing for prayer and Bible reading, all the things. Just get in your quiet place. Pick out your time you're going to do it. All the normal things you've been doing. Center yourself. Okay, touch a rock. Go outside, touch that rock. Or touch the tree, as some of us have suggested. Breathe. Take some deep breaths in your nose, in and out of your nose. And then just notice your emotions. Don't start talking yet. Just notice, how's your body feeling? Do a body scan. Head down, what am I feeling? Is there some tension in my shoulders or somewhere? I wonder what that's about. Is there stress? And just whatever you're feeling, let that come out. And then name your emotions. I'm worried about this thing. I'm worried about my job or my kids, or I'm scared, or I'm bored. I don't want to do this. Whatever you're feeling, just name it. Name the emotion. And then, if that's not hard enough, feel the emotion. Some of us don't want to do this, just feel it. It's like when you notice your emotions and you name your emotions, don't just push it aside immediately. Feel that. Feel the fear. Enter into that space because you're there with God. It's a safe place to feel your feelings. Name your feelings, feel your feelings, and then offer it to God. God, please take this from me. I want to give this to you. I trust you. And then you begin your prayer. After you've noticed it, named it, you feel your emotions. It's a real simple thing, simple steps, but this is one of those real simple but real hard to do at the same time. It's very hard to do. I would encourage you, do it however much you want to. Do it once this week. Just try it. You know, if it's too hard, too painful, I do recommend. There are some things like maybe you can't face it by yourself and you need some help. Maybe you want a brother or sister you trust here at the church to do it with you to talk about this first. Maybe you want a shepherd or a minister. Maybe you need a therapist. That's totally fine. Sometimes we got to break through some things and then learn how to diffuse things, and then we can start facing it. I encourage you, try it at least once. Try it a few times. Do it every day this week. Do it every day if you need to or want to. I think you'll be blessed for doing that. All right, any questions on that? Okay, let's just review here today. When we slow down with God, often the first thing that come up is emotional pain, as we talked about. The three main ways to deal with pain are to deny the pain, detach from the pain, from any feeling, or just to drug it and numb yourself. The Jesus way is to meet God in our pain. And our emotional pain can either sabotage our transformation or be the key to our transformation, whatever we'll let it do. Okay? So that's today's lesson, y'all. Now, it is VBS this week, so that means Wednesday we will not be meeting in the Sacred Rhythms class to go over this in further detail. There will be adult classes every night at VBS. Tonight and Monday through Wednesday we'll have classes. It's going to be in the auditorium after skits. We'll start our class there. Once again, we're still reading the book, pages 118 to 155. But I ask a question as we end every class. I want to ask it again today. Do you want to become like Jesus?
Yes.
Thank you. Then let's get to work apprenticing. Okay? This time, just noticing and naming what's within us. Let's end with this prayer. Feel free to pray along with me out loud if you want to. God of Gethsemane, who experiences and knows the pain of our condition, help us turn to you in the ache of our emotions when the day has turned dark, that we may know the liberation of your transforming love, not only by the calm water's edge, but when we're traveling on the waters of the storms that life brings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. You are dismissed.